Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
The IDF is vowing to track down and eliminate every last Hamas fighter still hiding underground on the Israeli side of the Yellow Line. Troops are destroying tunnels, striking targets, and flushing terrorists out of their last hiding spots. More from ILTV's Devil Klein.
For weeks, combat teams from the Nachal and Golani brigades under the Gaza division have been operating deep inside Rafah, destroying tunnels, striking targets, and flushing terrorists out of their last hiding spots. IDF engineers, together with Yahalom, have encircled multiple underground routes, collapsing hundreds of meters of tunnels and crushing the infrastructure above ground. In just the past week, more than 60 targets were hit, including 15 shafts and 40 buildings used by Hamas. Inside these areas, troops found rifles, explosives, magazines, and stockpiles of weaponry, proof of a terror network still operating beneath Rafah. Commanders say dozens of Hamas operatives remain trapped since the collapse of the previous truce, led by a battalion commander and company commanders. They are running out of food, running out of air, and running out of time. Some emerge from the tunnels desperate for supplies and are immediately targeted.
אנחנו נלחמים פה בצוות קרב משולב, גם רקם, גם חי"ר וכוחות איסוף ואוויר. כשהמטרה המרכזית היא איתור האויב והשמדתו או כניעה שלו. אלה שתי המשימות המרכזיות שיש לנו במרחב. במהלך השבועות האחרונים היה לנו התקלות עם 4 מחבלים, ומה שקרה אתמול, 17 מחבלים יוצאים במרחב גזרת הצקח של הנחל, ויחד עם כוחות של גדוד 12 מושמדים וחלקם נשבים. אנחנו ממשיכים במשימות עד שנעצור אותם עד הניצחון.
Just last week, troops eliminated 4 operatives who broke above ground. Over the weekend, 17 more terrorists crawled out of 2 tunnel routes. 11 were killed in intense fire exchanges, and 6 were captured for interrogation. Today, the IDF says 2 more terror operatives were killed after crossing the Yellow Line in northern Gaza, approaching troops of the 188th Armored Brigade and reservists of the Carmeli Brigade, posing an immediate threat. Earlier, the Israeli Air Force struck 3 operatives in southern Gaza who had attempted to approach troops. The IDF remains deployed across Gaza to remove any immediate threat under the current ceasefire agreement.
Well, joining us now for more is Reserves Major General Yaakov Amidror. He's the former head of Israel's National Security Council. He's now with the Ginza Strategic Center. General Amidror, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we should be, of course, immensely grateful. Another hostage returned. Almost all the hostages are now back. In theory, that should be now leading Gaza from phase 1 of the agreement into phase 2. We know on paper what that's supposed to look like, but based on what is actually happening in Gaza and in the region, how do you think it's going to develop in the next few weeks?
I think that the Americans will continue their efforts to organize forces that will come into Gaza to do what is needed according to the plan to disarm Hamas and to begin the rebuilding of Gaza. First of all, to understand what is the situation and then to make some preparations and plans. I think that they are too optimistic. I don't see the countries which will be ready to send their forces to fight Hamas. I don't see Hamas ready to disarm itself. It is true that if you would ask the same question a few months ago, I probably, my answer was very pessimistic about the ability of the Americans to convince Hamas to release the hostages, and it happened. So we have to be very careful. As far as we can understand the situation today, the Americans didn't succeed to move Hamas towards any agreement about disarming them. And without such an agreement, I don't know who will do the job.
Well, in the meantime, there has been a situation that's developed with one half of the Gaza Strip in Israel in the IDF's hands, another in a resurgent Hamas. We see Hamas reasserting itself in that area of Gaza. Is that a status quo that Israel and the IDF can live with, can maintain?
Israel can maintain it. no hostages in the hands of Hamas. The IDF is a buffer between Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Gaza envelope population. From our point of view, we can continue for a long time. There is no any pressure on Israel in this situation. We are in a good position to defend ourselves, to defend the people around Gaza. Hamas is separated from Egypt. They cannot smuggle in a weapon system. They cannot continue to produce inside Gaza. They lost their ability to produce in Gaza. Yes, they can recruit more members to the organization. They can train them. They can prepare more explosives and traps for the IDF in the future. Hamas will be stronger, but not in a level which will stop the IDF if the IDF decide to go and to take control of this area where Hamas is now. So from that point of view, this situation, Israel is not any under pressure, but I think that the Americans are under pressure because the more time Hamas is holding the area, less are the chances to convince the organization to be disarmed. And the suffering of the people in Gaza is enormous. I mean, to live in these circumstances under the control of this organization, it's a nightmare. And I think that the Americans understand it, the Arab countries understand it. And I will not be surprised if at the end of the day, the Americans and others, some on the table, some under the table, will tell us, you know what, do the job and destroy Hamas. And we will have to resume the war in Gaza.
Resume the war in Gaza, and there is a similar situation seems to be developing on the northern front with Lebanon. Again, the question is, who is going to disarm Hezbollah according to the terms of that agreement? So are we basically looking at a return to potentially a multi-front war in the either near or certainly coming future?
The situation in the north is a different situation because there is a government, there is an address of responsibility inside the Lebanon, unlike Gaza, in which Hamas is the top organization. It is the body which is governing the Gaza Strip. So in Lebanon, the situation is a different one. But yes, it might come at the end to a situation in which the Americans and maybe even the Lebanese government under the table will tell us, guys, we don't know how to do it. We cannot do it. Do whatever you can, and we will have to take care for Hezbollah. It's a different kind of a war. Now there is no any threat from land forces towards our settlements in the north. It will be probably almost totally Air Force operation against facilities and capabilities of Hezbollah. It is not two front. It is one front, probably totally Air Force operation, and the other one will be with huge land forces, ground forces going into Gaza. And remember that unlike what happened in Lebanon 2 years ago, year and a half ago, today Syria is a country which is hostile to Hezbollah in Lebanon.
All right, Yaakov Amidror, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
According to new assessments, Iran has already restored most of the missile stockpile destroyed by Israel during June's 12-day war and is now reportedly quickly approaching its pre-war inventory.
Israeli media reports Tehran is on track to field around 2,000 surface-to-surface missiles capable of hitting Israel within just months. Part of Iran's arsenal survived Israel's strikes by being hidden in deep underground tunnel networks, and since the war, Iran has worked around the clock to replenish the rest. During the June conflict, Iran fired over 550 ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 attack drones toward Israel. Another 1,000 missiles and 250 launchers were destroyed on the ground by Israeli forces. But intelligence officials warn Iran's next war plan is far more dangerous. Tehran supposedly intends to launch up to 2,000 missiles simultaneously, a saturation strike designed to overwhelm Israel's air defenses. While Iran apparently has not resumed uranium enrichment to previous high levels, it is rebuilding damaged nuclear infrastructure, including new fortified sites, among them a secretive facility nicknamed Pickaxe Mountain. Analysts say the combination of nuclear reconstruction and rapid missile replenishment signals a long-term Iranian strategy: recover, expand, and prepare for the next confrontation. Israeli defense officials now warn that any future war with Iran will be longer, harder, and broader, likely extending to Iranian-backed militias in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has ordered a new program to protect Israel's air superiority, increase long-range strike readiness, and prevent Iran from further advancing its missile and nuclear projects. Israel sees Iran's rapid rearmament not as routine military recovery, but as a direct countdown. A rebuilt Iranian missile force means the next war may not just be inevitable, but far more devastating than the last.
And now, with this dramatic escalation in Beirut, where Israel's targeted strike has eliminated Hezbollah's de facto military chief and has prompted Lebanon to call for international intervention, I am now joined by Hussein Abdul Hussein, research fellow at FDD. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Israel eliminated Ali Tabatabai, Hezbollah's military chief, in the heart of Beirut. How significant is this assassination? We know he's been on the U.S. wanted list as well.
I think the top significance is that Hezbollah has been claiming that since the war stopped, it has changed its mode of operation, that it has weeded out all the spies in its midst, that Israel does not have any insight into how the organization is rebuilding itself. I think by taking out the top military guy, we know that all of these Hezbollah claims are just claims. Hezbollah is rebuilding itself, but it's still vulnerable to Israeli attacks.
Now, the IDF says this was a precise strike under direct orders from Netanyahu. Why do you think Israel would choose to strike inside Beirut now and in such a high-profile way, despite the fragile ceasefire that was in place?
Like Prime Minister Netanyahu said, Lebanon is not living up to its promise and its commitment that it signed in the cessation of hostilities last November. And if Lebanon is not going to do what it promised to do, that is to disarm Hezbollah, then someone else will have to do it. And this someone else happens to be Israel. So one of the sides or the parties will have to uphold UN Security Council Resolution 1701, the cessation of hostilities deal between the two sides. And the Lebanese, unfortunately, even though they promised and signed on it, they're not doing it. So Israel is stepping up. And at whatever cost. I think, Israel has to do what Israel has to do at this point.
From a military standpoint, how severely does this weaken Hezbollah's operational chain of command?
It does significantly. Apparently, this guy had some sort of talent that they deployed him to Yemen and to Syria. So his military expertise seems to have been vast. But this does not take out the whole chain of command. Of course, the chain of command was weakened in the last war between the two sides. But I think there are still a lot of Hezbollah generals that remain at large. And maybe Israel is still after them. But the organization still has the ability to wage war against Israel, which must keep this low-intensity war going between the two sides until, of course, as we said, the Lebanese state steps up and disarms Hezbollah.
So we're hearing the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, is asking for global action against the Israeli attacks. What is likely to happen next, do you think?
I think Lebanon lost credibility with the United States and with the global community. Lebanon promises things and it doesn't live up to them, and that's a big problem. And they go by the same template. They have changed the sequence of steps, the order of things. The agreement and the cessation of hostilities was Hezbollah to be disarmed, then Israel stops policing Hezbollah, and Israel withdraws from the 5 hilltops. Now the Lebanese are demanding that Israel stops policing first and withdraws from the hilltop, and then they might or might not disarm Hezbollah. This is not in the agreement. Everyone knows it. Washington knows it. And I think at this point, even the relationship, which was friendly between Washington and Beirut until very recently, has become sour. We've just seen Washington cancel all the meetings of the Lebanese army commander who was visiting Washington. So I don't think world capitals are taking Beirut's statements for real this time.
But where does this leave Lebanon's government? Can Beirut realistically disarm Hezbollah as Netanyahu demands, or is that simply impossible given Hezbollah's power in the country?
The Lebanese government has been as wily, as mercurial as possible on this. On one hand, they say that the Lebanese army does not have the capabilities to take on Hezbollah. And then when the United States approves $200 million in aid to the Lebanese armed forces, then President Talon says, if we take on Hezbollah, there'll be civil war. So they're not sure which excuse they're trying to use. But what we know for sure is that there's no will to take on Hezbollah. Maybe they prefer that Hezbollah does it, which is not really that good anyway. But what we know for sure is that Lebanon is not moving on Hezbollah. And like I said, if they don't do, someone else will have to do it. And this someone happens to be Israel.
Hussein Abdul Hussein, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Israel has approved a new plan to bring the remaining members of India's Bnei Menashe community to Israel by 2030. The group identifies as descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, and they are among India's last Jewish communities. Our correspondent, India Naftali, has the details.
Israel's government has now approved a 5-year plan to bring the majority of the remaining Bnei Menashe community from India to Israel. The decision, submitted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Aliyah and Integration Minister Ophir Sofer, will enable about 5,800 community members to make Aliyah by the year 2030. Around 1,200 are expected to arrive by the end of 2026. There are currently an estimated 5,000 Bnei Menashe already living in Israel, most having arrived over the past 2 decades under previous government initiatives. The Bnei Menashe live primarily in the northeastern Indian states of Mizoram and Manipur, within the Kuki-Chin and Mizo communities. They are descendants of the biblical tribe of Manasseh, one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, and are considered among India's last remaining Jewish communities. Under the plan, all new arrivals will undergo Orthodox conversion through the chief rabbinate. They will mainly settle in the north of the country, part of a broader effort to rebuild and strengthen the communities of the Galilee region following the war. Prime Minister Netanyahu called the move an important and Zionist decision, saying it will provide a boost to the north and help reunite families long divided between India and Israel. Aliyah Minister Sofer praised the decision as part of a wider wave of immigration in recent years, saying this Aliyah strengthens Israel's resilience, solidarity, and national renewal. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said the move marks a renewed connection of brothers who have carried the yearning for Zion for generations. A government delegation is set to travel to India within days to begin processing applications. The operation will be coordinated by the Chief Rabbinate, the Conversion Authority, the Population and Immigration Authority, the Foreign Ministry, and the Jewish Agency. The first phase of the plan is budgeted at 90 million shekels through 2026. The funds will cover immigration costs, conversion, housing and absorption centers, Hebrew language programs, and employment support, helping the new arrivals integrate smoothly into their communities in the north.
And so, as Israel approves this landmark plan to bring the entire Bnei Menashe community home by 2030, we are now joined by India Naftali to discuss this issue here in studio. Thanks for joining us, India.
Thank you so much, Sivan.
So let's, to begin, understand, for viewers less familiar with this whole, with this community, who are the Bnei Menashe? What is their story?
So the Bnei Menashe are a Jewish community located in northeast India. They come from the tribe of Manasseh. They were in the land of Israel 2,700 years ago. They were exiled by the Assyrians, and they've been out of the land of Israel ever since. So for generations, they've been keeping Jewish customs and laws, keeping Shabbat, Jewish purity rituals, and that is really their claim to Judaism. They're one of the 10 lost tribes, and they're about a population of 10,000. They're part of India's very small Jewish population.
And now, what does this decision actually mean? How significant is it that Israel has now committed to bringing the entire Bnei Menashe community, roughly 6,000 people, by the end of the decade?
So this is historic, Sivan. I mean, this is the first time that the government has ever approved such a large mass aliyah. If we talk about the aliyah of the Ethiopian Jews, they were brought in several operations and waves. And this framework that's happening with the Bnei Menashe to bring the remaining roughly 6,000 that are in India, it's happening in one go, in one framework. So this is the first time. There's going to be families that have been separated for 20 years who haven't been able to make aliyah, that have been in India, and who are now going to be reunited with the roughly 5,000 Bnei Menashe community members here in Israel. Now, for you to understand, I mentioned in my piece that they're going to have to go through a conversion process, a Orthodox Jewish conversion process. So you might ask yourself, if they're Jewish, why would they have to go through that process?
Right.
Well, the answer is this. So because they've been exiled so long in the diaspora for over 2,000 years, the Judaism they practice isn't exactly the same as rabbinical Judaism, which was created after the destruction of the first temple, and they left right around that time of the destruction of the first temple. So the Judaism they practice is from that time era, and as we know, that rabbinical Judaism was created afterwards. So now that we're going to see them. That their Judaism aligns with rabbinical Judaism that is considered halakha here in Israel.
Halakha, Jewish law here in Israel. So to make sure that everyone is aligned.
In the same practice of Judaism.
None of us are really 100% aligned,
That's
but
right.
More or less. All right, so the state delegation is flying to India within days, and the government allocated 90 million shekels for this first phase, covering conversion and housing and Hebrew education and integration. What challenges do you think that the state will face in absorbing such a large wave of immigrants?
Certainly the question of education, a lot of them come from communities where they don't have traditional education, so coming and finding job placement might be a difficult issue. But like you said, 90 million shekels is a huge pledge to make sure that these new members of our society have a smooth landing, and it's going to be invested in hopefully education, definitely housing, and they already have quite a significant community here to welcome them and show them the ropes.
And what are some of the actual community members saying about this big move?
Sivan, I know people who it's been their entire life's work for the past 20 years to bring this piece of the diaspora home to Israel. So for them, this is a completion of their life's dream. I mean, this is just the beginning of a historic moment of really bringing all Jews from across the world home to Israel.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, it will be incredible to see this new wave of aliyah, of immigration coming to Israel, integrating, absorbing, and joining the Israeli public here in Israel, the Holy Land. Thank you very much, India, Naftali.
Thank you, Sivan.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at ILTV.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. See you next week.